Hillary Clinton. It's a name that, for decades, felt like it was synonymous with power, with ambition, and with an almost certain path to the presidency. But the final prize, the one she worked her entire life for, just slipped through her fingers. So let's get into the story of why.
And this quote, wow, it really nails the heart of what we're talking about today. It's this incredible story of getting right to the edge of ultimate power, closer than almost anyone in history, only to see it vanish. It's a story that didn't just change her life, it completely reshaped American politics.
So to really understand why she didn't win, we've got to go back and see how she got so incredibly close in the first place. And believe me, this wasn't an overnight thing. It was a marathon, a calculated, decades-long climb where she and her husband, Bill Clinton, became this absolute political force.
I mean, just look at this timeline. It's this steady, relentless climb right to the top. From being a first lady who was deeply involved in policy to becoming a U.S. Senator for New York and then the country's top diplomat as Secretary of State. Every single step was another rung on the ladder, all leading to that historic presidential nomination in 2016. It was just an unprecedented rise to power.
But here's the thing. Right from the very beginning, people were split, deeply split on who she was. You basically had two different Hillarys in the public eye. On one side, people admired her for being incredibly smart, tough, and focused on the details. But on the other side, those exact same qualities, her ambition, her strategic thinking, were seen as huge negatives, especially for a woman who was breaking all the old rules. And that divide, it followed her everywhere.
And this split wasn't just about what people thought of her personality. It had real consequences. As she gained more and more power, the stories started to build around her, a story of secrecy, of being untrustworthy. It was like controversy became this shadow she just couldn't shake, and it created this deep well of suspicion that proved almost impossible to escape.
The first really big hit to that trust was Benghazi, the 2012 attack in Libya. It led to years and years of hearings in Congress. And even though no investigation ever pinned any direct wrongdoing on her, the political damage was just huge. For millions of voters, the word Benghazi just became shorthand for Hillary Clinton can't be trusted.
And then came the emails. The whole scandal over her using a private email server as Secretary of State was an absolute political firestorm. She called it a mistake, but that didn't do much to calm things down. The real bombshell, though, was when FBI Director James Comey came out and called what she did extremely careless. No charges were filed, but that phrase, it stuck like glue.
And this chart really puts the damage into perspective. Heading into the 2016 election, the trust deficit was massive. Get this, a staggering 2/3 of Americans said they didn't think she was honest. And that matters so much because, well, if voters don't trust you, how are you supposed to win over those undecideds who actually pick the president? That's a brutal number for any candidate to overcome.
So that's the backdrop for 2016. Clinton comes in with this classic, very traditional, policy-heavy campaign. But there was one huge problem. 2016 wasn't a traditional year. Not at all. The country was just boiling over with anger, especially in the working class, and people were desperate for an outsider. It was a mood her campaign just seemed to completely miss.
So what did that disconnect actually look like? Well, the campaign was obsessed with its data models, which told them they didn't need to spend much time in key states like Wisconsin. They thought those were in the bag. They just couldn't seem to connect with those voters who felt left behind, running a campaign that people on the inside later called both way too confident and, frankly, kind of a chaotic mess.
Okay, so all of this brings us to the big question, right? What really went wrong? How does arguably the most qualified candidate in modern American history lose? Well, the answer isn't just one thing. It's like a perfect storm of different factors that all came crashing together on election night.
The sources we looked at really point to these 5 key things. First, good old-fashioned gender bias. She was in a total catch-22. If she was strong, she was unlikable, but if she was warm, she was weak. Second, that establishment label was killer in a year when voters wanted to burn the establishment down. Third, that trust deficit we talked about, it just hung over everything. Fourth, the FBI surprise. That Comey letter just 11 days out completely killed her momentum. And finally, the cold, hard math of the Electoral College.
And this number, this right here is at the heart of the whole paradox. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by almost 2.9 million. Let that sink in. More Americans actually cast their ballot for her than for her opponent. But as we all know, that's not how the American system works.
This table shows you exactly why the Electoral College was the whole ballgame in 2016.
The entire election came down to just 3 states in the Rust Belt. She lost Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania by a combined total of only about 76,000 votes. If that handful of votes had gone the other way, we'd be living in a completely different reality.
So when you put it all together, what are you left with? It's what you could call the Clinton paradox. On one hand, she's this respected trailblazer who shattered one of the highest glass ceilings in politics, but on the other, she's one of the most disliked and rejected political figures of her time.
And these numbers, they paint a pretty stark picture of that paradox. On Election Day, 56% of the country had an unfavorable view of her. That's a record high for a Democratic nominee. So while her supporters were really with her, her opponents were even more fired up. And those swing voters in the middle, they largely walked away.
And that's really the most mind-bending part of this whole story. On paper, her resume was just untouchable. She was going up against a reality TV star with zero political experience, and she lost. It's a result that people are going to be debating for a very, very long time.
Which leaves us with one final, big question to chew on. Was Hillary Clinton's loss just a story about the unique flaws of one candidate, her controversies, her campaign style, or does it tell a much bigger, maybe more uncomfortable, story about America itself, about our divisions, our biases, and what we really, truly want in a leader? That's something worth thinking about.